Hey guys, welcome back to another Logic Pro X tutorial. Today I want to talk about studio strings and how to use strings or studio strings in Logic Pro X. And I want to come at it from a beginner perspective, beginner intermediate, and showing how we can play strings inside of a kind of a temporary pop song, if you will. I have a song I'm working on that I've done some strings with already, and I'll show you how I approached it to put a string kind of instrumentation piece in there. If you're looking to get a more like a longer tutorial video on strings, there is another great YouTuber. His name is Nathan Larson. He's a really cool video on strings, and I highly recommend that video. Let's get into this little pop song here that I'm working on, and let's add some strings to it. I've soloed out the strings here, and I'm gonna unsolo this and give you guys an idea of kind of the vibe of the song before we get into it. So this is
everything okay?
so very kind of a really nice laid back guitar, some lo-fi vibes, and then we have a bit of a more epic chorus with strings and big kind of orchestral drum hits. So this is what the chorus will sound like with some strings. So some real epic verbs in there and lots of big spacey sounds to make it very dreamy. So let's kind of dig into that, specifically this studio strings here and how we're going to use those. I have some studio strings that I've built in the pre-chorus, but I'd like to focus right now on the chorus section. So let's zoom in here and talk about this. What we're going to do is get 4 new tracks here and we're going to make this from scratch. We have a cello, violas, double bass, and violins. And let's go open our library here. We can press Y or just open this folder and add some studio strings. If you don't know how to get this, you can go track, new software instrument track, and it will open up like a default synth, and then you just go down to studio strings. And then here are your strings. We have cellos, double basses, violas, violins too, and some deeper section instruments too. So when we open up like a cello or double bass, the interface will be the same, and then on the inside we can also change the instruments. So let's say we open up cellos, and then we open up the strings section here. And this is our interface where we can again change the single instruments here, or we can also use something of an actual like quartet where we can be playing one note, and that will give us kind of like a orchestral kind of instrumentation here. So, but if you want just the pieces, here are the pieces, and then here are the sectional instruments. Okay, so I want to build this chorus up. I want to build that kind of epicness, and strings is the perfect epic instrument to build. That's why it's so popular in cinematic music. So we're going to start with our cellos. So we'll go not disco strings, we'll go cellos. And then before we dive into like writing notes or playing it on our MIDI keyboard, let's just talk a little bit about these things. What we're really going to focus on is the cutoff. And then after we play some MIDI notes, we can play around with the resonance, the attack, and the release to feel out the vibe of what we're going for. But I know for a fact I want a low attack, and I want it like a kind of a quarter release, and I don't really want any resonance. We're going to have this cello part, we're going to have monophonic off because I want to play some cello chords, and monophonic would be kind of one notes. The dynamics is helpful because if you have this off, then you can use the, if you have a MIDI keyboard with kind of a wheel, like a little half wheel on the side, you can use that wheel to do your modulation on its own. Or if you don't want to do that, you can do your kind of self velocity. So if we have that off and we just, let me get some sound here. Why isn't the sound coming in? There's the sound. So it depends. So if dynamics vsts is off, if I play the keyboard soft, it will be a soft note. If I play it hard, it will be a hard note. So it's taking that velocity in from my actual human hand instead of using the wheel. So it depends on how you want to play. Now let's get a cello part in here. So the key of the song is in C major, and I am going to play whole note chords with the chord progression. So it's a C major, A minor, F major to an F minor. So I'm going to just play those chords more or less in full triads or just 2 notes in the chord. So let me do that now on my MIDI and just making sure everything is right. Oh, actually, super important thing to mention are all these things here. Sustain is when you play a note and it sustains the whole note. You've probably heard of some of these, like staccato is when they're short notes, so I can press that and show you what I mean. And then spiccato is even shorter. And pizza, I like the pizza, it's not called pizza, but it's called pizzicato. It's kind of like muted plucks, and that can be really cool in some parts to even add like some percussive elements. And then tremolo is really cool to generate some excitement. Everyone knows tremolo, right? You've heard that in every orchestral song and probably Pirates of the Caribbean. So let's just go to sustain. I recommend testing out all of these, especially if you're into making cinematic music. These are going to be your go-to for creating dynamic, your articulation section. And this song is specifically, you wouldn't want to do any like staccato, spiccato, maybe some bits here and there, but we're really going to want just a sustain to fill the notes. Okay, let's add this in. I'll mute my other strings for now, and I'll add the cello part. We're going to want to make sure we have the rest of the song going. Okay, good to go. Press R on my keyboard, and I'm going to have the click on too. Let's take a quick listen. Very simple. Very low velocity here. We can change that if we want. Higher up, coming up to a bit of a crescendo. Ooh, suspenseful. Suspenseful. Okay. Because this is a pop song and not the Pirates of the Caribbean song, we are going to keep our strings simple so they don't pop out too much in the mix and distract the listener. We want the listener to focus on the vocal melody. So we're going to keep the strings nice and simple, and what we will do is add dynamic in the modulation and the cutoff to make it really, it's still there, but it's interesting enough that it has a purpose and a point to the music. These were a bit low, so I can just change the velocity here quickly. Usually in my piano editor tool, I like to have a third velocity tool here. That's the right click on the mouse. So I can quickly go right click and like drag these up if I to change velocities. And velocity is a great way to add and change dynamic too. But what we first, the biggest things to do that will be in automation. Just like in automation in kind of your main editor window, we can do the same thing down here. And we're going to automate cutoff, but we're also going to automate the modulation. So modulation is here. And I'll give you an idea of what modulation sounds like. It is a subtle difference. So at the highest modulation, or let's start with low first. The lowest modulation, it will sound like this. Let me just get that lined up properly. Okay, highest modulation. We don't want to start off too high in the modulation. We kind of want to end that modulation a bit higher. So what we might do is like draw in something that keeps the listener active, maybe lowers it down, maybe something like this, and then at the end, getting a bit more suspense. And we can, this is helpful, like to get kind of a pattern that you like, and then, you know, seeing what level you want it at. So that's how I like to do it at least. So let's start here like this and see what that sounds like. So a little too much in those sections, too much of a difference in between everything. So just something very simple right now to give it some character. Let's go and automate the cutoff now. We can. So we go to Smart Controls, and then Smart Controls, so it is available in the Instrument plugin. When we click strings, we can change the cutoff. And the cutoff will basically take, if you have like it 100%, the kind of signal is blasting through 100%, and then the more we bring it down, the more quiet it's going to sound, because we're taking out like all the high end and bringing it down. So you'll drastically hear the difference right now if I have a low cutoff. Can't even hear it. So it's nice, I can do kind of a self-automation right now for you to get a bit of a vibe, and I'll just do it with my mouse here. I'll show you what I mean. So kind of raising that filter off till the end really creates excitement, and is a very popular trick to do in really all type of pop music nowadays. So we can just draw this in quickly. This is the exact same percentage as what we saw here on this little thing. And so we can do this automatically using Latch, I believe. I'm not sure if Latch is available inside here, but we can do this inside automation by pressing A and actually doing it in here as well. But, you know, let's stick to the editor right now since we're already in here. So let's draw a bit of an automation here again. I kind of want it, where did I have it here? I kind of was start like between 60, and then I think I got up to like 85 or 90. So let's start around 60, kind of maybe bump it up at that little note here, bring it down this section, then, you know, go there. Let's see what that sounds like. Keep in mind too, as we're playing this, it's also taking into account the modulation automation that we added as well. So big difference in dynamic, right? It really helps come in and out of the song, so it's not just like a the whole time. And then that's really going to create, that's really going to create the dynamic in the song here. So we've done cutoff automation, we've done modulation automation, we have our part written here, and our part is very simple. It's just following the chord progression of the song, and then we are adding like a little accent note in the chord here, which is the octave above, to create excitement there. Let's add a double bass part and get another low end section. So this is cellos. We'll call this one bass, double bass. And make sure we don't have any panning on. We will use panning at the end, another great way to get some space and dynamic for things. And then let's go and add our double bass. So we're gonna go sustain again. We'll just keep all this the same. And we do want monophonic because we're only gonna be playing one note just to fill that low end. And let's do sustain. Dynamics, I can turn that on, I guess. Yeah, it doesn't really matter right now. Okay, so very simple. For the double bass, I can even draw it in because it's so simple. Just gonna do the low end heavy notes to fill the space. So I can go TP to bring up a pencil, click on that, and then go TT to bring up my pencil tool again. So that's like T, TP, TE, TE, you get the idea. So quickly going TT brings up the pointer tool again, and I'm gonna loop that, or sorry, not loop, extend the region, and then just draw these notes in. Sometimes it's just faster that way. And there's a note, so, and it's too low, I believe, that's why we can't hear it. Or too high. I don't really know where, oh, C5, okay, so that's too high. Let's go down, there we go. C2, we can probably go lower, nice and low. But we're gonna go C, let's go low, high, low. I think that would be the right approach, so. Da, 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 we can do something like that. So because I played this with, well, I didn't play it, I drew it. We're gonna want to change the velocities because they're all the same right now, and that's not realistic. So let's change the velocities a bit to what I think a player would actually do. And we are going to not do cutoff right away. Let's turn that off. Let's do, or let's bring that up, I guess, to 100 right now. And then let's do modulation. Let's do a pattern, something similar to last time. So way too aggressive there. It's just way too aggressive overall. I think the cutoff is at 100%. That's why we did that by accident. So we don't want that. We want, yeah, probably the cutoff to be just to fill like 48, 45. We might automate up to like 54 at the end of the chorus section here. Cutoff automation. Started around 45, bring it up here, open up the filter a bit. Nice and low, can barely hear it. Pops out a bit. Really pops out there, maybe too much. Really coming up now. Probably coming up too much there. It's a bit whiny, it's a bit annoying, so I want to pop that down, maybe 52. Let's hear what that sounds like here. This note here, the velocity, maybe bump it down. That's better. I just don't, you gotta watch out for those whiny tones because they really pop out in the mix. Now let's bring the guitar in to see what that sounds like. We really just wanted to pad. Perfect. It's sitting there nicely now. Now we're gonna add some texture with the violin, and we'll be able to have some nice accents with the violas and violins. So let's do that next. We want this track here. I'm gonna rip that off from my earlier take and show you what I did. That string's so nice. Isn't that pretty? So here we have a breakdown of this kind of C major, which is kind of holding the house together there in a way. And we have a little melody here, which is just the chord, C major. So here, let's get a preview. Come on. And then, so that is definitely more busy, right? But it will layer in nicely with our cellos and bass because those are not busy. And if we had a busy cello, a busy bass, busy viola, busy violin, it would just be way too much because strings are all about layering, which means some layers need to be simple and like one or two can be a little more complex. We did a cutoff automation here, and we also did a modulation automation on the lower side. So same principles, do cutoff modulation and cutoff automation and modulation automation. So let's add some violins now. Same process. Take off the panning here, bump up the volume, solo that, and we'll go to our first or second. I preferred the second one. I found it just to be a bit warmer. Kind of has a warmer look too. Maybe that's actually why. So let's do the defaults. Make sure sustain is on, off on monophonic, dynamics off. We'll change this later with automation and we'll leave that. I'm going to just show you what I did here and how we'll mix it in and layer it in. See what this sounds like. So this is kind of a top line melody that adds some flutteriness, and it is the highest octave we go. We're in the C4 range, and in our viola range here, we're in that, we are in the C4, C3 range more, but now we're kind of in the top end of the C4 range. Okay, now let's listen to everything in context. Oh, good point that I just heard to keep in mind, and this happens with keys sometimes, is when we're using quantization. So if I'm going to do quantize by 1/16th note, it really just knocks it into on the grid, but that's going to really kind of mess up some of our notes, especially if we're doing a lot of kind of twiddly things like this. If it falls right on the grid, it doesn't sound great because then the attack on the note isn't always like a piano or like a bass where it's right up front. It kind of is like milliseconds behind. So if it's on the grid, it kind of can seem late or early. So usually like the instruments themselves don't need much because they've already have effects on them. For example, the studio cellos automatically comes with some compression. It comes with a bit of its own EQ, the Fat Effects plugin, and some gain. I find that just adding maybe a boost in some of the EQs or like a reduction in the violins, if it's too harsh sometimes of the top areas where we can get a little bit like, you know, that sound there, this part here. So we can open up the EQ and just bring a low shelf in there to like give that a bit of some padding, though it's not so in your ear annoying. And then reverb is going to be your best friend for strings, and it comes with 2 buses already. It comes with a large room reverb, and then it comes with a concert hall. So you can just boost these reverbs up to the appropriate amount that you want. I'm going to go lowest to high in terms of octave to give that a mix, and then I'm going to mix that little bundle with the guitar. So I'm going to start with the bass. I am noticing the modulation is just too much, so I'm going to open that up, bring up the modulation, and bring that all down. Too much. This is better. That sits much nicer. Okay, let's bring the cellos. My mixing isn't very scientific. I like to just bring in the track, raise it super high, and then lower it until like I think it's kind of sitting with whatever I'm mixing with. So let's raise it. See that? Okay. There's too much overlap here in the cello. So there's this one note. This note here is just too much. So I'm going to bring that the octave up by going Shift Command up. And I'm also going to bring that modulation down a touch, just because it was kind of clashing with that bass note. Better. It sticks out now too much, so lower the velocity, stick that modulation down, take a look at the cutoff, and lower that cutoff a bit on the high notes because they can stick out a lot. Better. Now I don't hear it enough, so maybe I got carried away there. So open the cutoff a bit more. Nice, that sits well. Okay, let's, well, I haven't really listened to the rest. Okay. Suspense. That's gonna be fine with everything else. All right, let's do violas. That's nice. Sitting in there nice. That one velocity could be a touch higher on this, 16. This could be a touch higher, 27, 40. A little lower on this one. So just to get a bit more of a pop out on that note. Maybe too much. See those again? Just both now down. Yeah, that should be good. Yeah, that works. Now let's add the violins. Ah, so pretty. Let's okay. That fits nicely. So as a bundle, we have this, and we can bring up our guitar track and just mix them with the guitars. And that's how you would add strings to a chorus section in a pop song, and you can go and copy those MIDI notes to your other choruses or different parts of the song, and make different strings instruments with Logic Studio Strings. I hope it was helpful. Let me know in a comment of any other type of Logic tutorials you're looking for, and please feel free to subscribe, have a listen to some of my own music, and I hope to see you in the next video.